Welcome. Thanks so much for coming today. You are here at the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiatives session for the community of practice for schools and districts moving learning outside. And today, before we get started, if you just joined, we were asking everyone to say hello, introduce yourselves in the chat, and also please add your state abbreviation, the state that you live in, so that we can do some regional breakouts at the end of the meeting. Along state groupings. So, and feel free to add your name and organization and pronouns to your renaming as well. So my name is Sharon Danks, and you are all here at the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiatives Community of Practice for Schools and Districts Moving Learning Outside. This is a meeting that I think it's the 34th meeting today that we've had, which is kind of amazing, meeting since about July 2020. And we meet bi-weekly every other Tuesday at this time, and we have different presentations that we rotate through and a chance for you all to meet each other from around the country, to meet others who are interested in outdoor learning. This meeting is co-hosted by myself and my colleague, Lauren McKenna, who's a program manager with Green Schoolyards America. Today, because it's the beginning of the school year, we're going to be doing some going to reintroduce the initiative and reflect on where we are, give some background about the work and updates, and also connect what's going on now with long-term thinking and rationale for greening school grounds. So looking both at the needs, the immediate needs, and where we might head with outdoor learning movement and green schoolyard movements coming together. And so the theme for today's presentation is going to be back to school outside, using outdoor learning and schoolyard greening as strategic solutions during the pandemic and beyond. And again, my name is Sharon Danks. I'm the CEO of Green Schoolyards America and a co-founder of the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative. And for those who are here for the first time today, and for all of you, welcome. For those who are new, we thought we would just go through a little bit about the initiative. The National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative started with a vision to support schools and districts around the country in their efforts to reopen safely and equitably, using outdoor spaces as strategic and cost-effective solutions to increase capacity and provide access to abundant fresh air. Our goal is to improve outcomes for learning and mental and physical health and happiness at school. There are many benefits of outdoor learning during COVID. We have fresh air outside with greater air circulation that reduces the risk of virus transmission. And this helps schools that have reopened to stay open because it reduces transmission. There's more space outside to spread out and move around, so students don't have to be in their desks all day in the same spot to stay apart. Outdoor classrooms can be placed next to things that are interesting in the school grounds, giving schools hands-on resources right near their classroom spaces. Being outside has also been shown to have therapeutic mental health benefits, particularly if it's in proximity to nature, which reduces stress and restores students' ability to pay attention. The national initiative that we're working on is looking at an overall strategy of reframing outdoor learning as what we call Plan A, the thing that you might do first as your first choice, and we see online and indoor options as Plan B, things that you go to if you need to, if outdoor conditions aren't suitable on a given day. And so our goal has been to help schools and districts to move classes and programs outside into their own school grounds, and if needed, into local parks that might have more space. To consider the fresh air outdoors to be an added layer of protection that helps schools to stay open after students return to campus. We look at how we might help schools and districts invest in permanent items or think about what they might want for long-term use as they're buying infrastructure outside so nothing is wasted. And to plan for local weather and seasonal climate conditions such as heat and rain and snow and wind, and now in the West, smoke as well. This initiative places equity at the center. I think it's vitally important. Students can return to campus where they can connect with resources most effectively, and it's really important to prioritize the most vulnerable students with the highest needs, to include the school community in this decision-making process, and to consider outdoor clothing to be part of the infrastructure for outdoor learning, and make sure to provide students, if needed, with appropriate clothing and gear to be able to ensure that everyone's equally comfortable and dry as the seasons change. Right now, that might be alleviating heat, and later it might be preparing for the cold. This is a very flexible solution. You can do it at any scale. It can be an individual teacher who takes their class outside to sit under a tree on just one day, or it can be an entire district going outside the entire time with all of the classes. This is suitable for things like PE and recess, lunch, and other meals when masks are off, library programs, art programs, music programs, garden programs, and other special classes, and also before and after school programs. The National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative has a wonderful, large array of partners who have helped us put together materials that we've been working on over the last year and a half. Started with 4 founding partners who are Green Schoolyards America, the Lawrence Hall of Science, San Mateo County Office of Education, and a nonprofit called 10 Strands. We were joined by about 20 more organizations who were helping to lead our working groups last year. And we've had some wonderful foundations partners as well who've been supporting our work. Last year, we ran about 10 working groups that were looking at how to create a modest how-to manual to help schools and districts move classes and programs outdoors. And that modest idea grew into a gigantic project that we call now the National Outdoor Learning Library. We had about 250 volunteers join us in these 10 working groups to help to write materials in their areas of expertise, whether that was about equity or outdoor infrastructure and landscape design, education and teaching outside, school programs and meal service, community engagement, health guidance with doctors and public health officials helping us there, policy work, how we embed language that makes outdoor learning possible into local, state, and national policies, funding and economic models. And then this group started as Working Group 11, the community of practice for early adopters, which we've now changed the name for because it's a group we value highly and plan to continue into the future. But it's a place, this group, Group 11, the community of practice, is a place for schools and districts to come together to talk to one another directly about what it is you're doing, share ideas so that no one has to reinvent the wheel. So all the groups, the first 10 groups wrote materials that became the library. And the National Outdoor Learning Library is online now with 6 main chapters and about 150 different resources in it. And this, unlike a book where you might write the table of contents first and then fill it out, this came about more organically. We asked each working group to write the materials that they felt were needed to help people in their areas of expertise use their areas of expertise to move this work forward. And so have created the table of contents after the material was created. And so our table of contents, we have a narrative table of contents in its first draft online now, and we're in the process of updating that. So the site will get increasingly navigable and easier to find things as we work through creating some more frameworks for the information. But just know that there is a lot of content there now. It might take a little patience to find what you're needing, but you will need that in the next week or two. We hope to have that sorted out and clearer and easier to use. It will also have ongoing development. We plan to, you'll notice there's no COVID-19 in the name of the library. We plan to keep this library online permanently and to add to it with resources from our own work, with Green Schoolyards America's work on ecological design of school grounds, climate mitigation, stormwater management, and outdoor learning. We plan to also continue to include materials others have written and want to contribute. So we're hoping it will remain an online portal that will be useful for years to come. And then I just thought I would point out a few things in here that have been added in the summer and spring. There's a chapter on how to take meals outdoors, which is a time of day when everyone has their masks off. So it's particularly important to be in a place with good ventilation or to be outside where air is free flowing. And so there's a set of materials that walk you through planning considerations for getting started and how you might implement, what kinds of outdoor furnishings are important to support with outdoor meals, how you manage waste, and then a case study from Arlington, Virginia, where the school district had many schools going outside for meals. We also have a wonderful startup toolkit for schools, and this is you can think about it as a pathway through the vast library of 150 materials. It narrows that list down and puts them in a sequence if you're working at an individual school scale and want to know, what do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? This resource is set up to help step through that, and it will be both this guided tour for schools will be both a page of the website, it's currently up now, and a downloadable PDF that you're seeing there in the image. And you can download the PDF on the page as well. And it steps through the process of helping a school look at your landscape and think about where people might sit. And it includes portals to an app that a colleague developed as part of a volunteer colleague developed as part of this initiative that you're seeing in this photograph with the pink seats there. It's a tool that lets you place seating, virtual reality, augmented reality seating into a live picture of your school ground. So you can snap a photo of what you envision doing and share that with your school community. And there's templates and other things linked into this document. I should also say we're in the process of working on a school district guided tour. Similar to this, it parallels it. So this is at the school scale. What does one school do? And the next set of resources and pathways will be us guiding you through the materials if you're a school district trying to set up a new program. So that is also in progress. And this community of practice has a page on our website library as well. And it includes a little bit more information about what we usually do, and also a list of past presentations and the recordings from these presentations that are online on our YouTube channel, and then linked into the page with timing notes so you can jump to the parts that you're interested in watching. I'm a little behind in getting those online, I apologize, but we have a few more coming soon, and we'll try to keep that more updated through the fall. And we are planning to continue meeting every other week. We have this particular link for our Zoom meetings goes through the end of the year. I think we'll likely continue it into 2022. It's nice to see you all and get together. We'll probably change the topics as we go to be more directed toward creating green schoolyards and living schoolyards and supporting district adoption of that work. But for now, we're focused both on the COVID aspects of how are schools and districts adapting to the pandemic, and how does that help them set up for long-term use of outdoor spaces. And so we have 3 sets of wonderful speakers in the next 3 presentations after this one from Fayetteville, Arkansas Public Schools, the school district, another one from the school district in Falmouth, Massachusetts, and then one also from Boulder Valley School District. So all over the country, this work is happening, and these our colleagues will come and share their work on the future meetings. We also on the website have a recorded webinar that might interest you, that at the 1-year mark of this effort in June, on June 2nd, we gave a webinar that looked back at the past year and analyzed the impact of COVID on education and on the outdoor learning, the growth of the outdoor learning movement. And so this, if you're interested in looking at those initial impact questions and findings, feel free to look at the webinar. We will also be, in coming weeks, you'll see us send out a newsletter with a survey to find out more detailed information. We're in the process of starting a more robust national effort to quantify what's been happening. So we will tell you about that in the coming, probably at the next community practice meeting. But this one has initial findings and a lot of detail on the past year. I wanted to say too that we're in the process of reframing the website and to shifting our table of contents. So you'll see that move around. We're dividing, because it's a library and not a book, we're dividing it into big sections, which are the tentative list of sections is on this page here with a tentative draft new look that we're still working on. But I thought I would just show you the preview so you know where we're heading, and within these sections there'll be chapters with the same content that's expanding, but this will let our content continue to grow in a framework that will support it into the future. So what are we seeing right now in this new school year? So much has changed in the last few months. I remember in June, we were here together thinking that the pandemic was almost over. The vaccines had seemed to bring it under control. And then the summer happened, and we're here now with the Delta variant that's far more transmissible than what we were facing last year, and it's surging in many places. Climate crisis has also become a lot more visible this summer and fall all across the country, whether it's fires here in California or floods or hurricanes happening elsewhere. We're very aware of this, and I think both of those together are adding a lot of stress to all of us. I know we all come to these meetings holding that stress, and this is a place to to share, what we can do to work through the moment, but to acknowledge that there's a mental health crisis that goes along with both of these things and having them simultaneously. And we know right now that schools are reopening with in-person learning, and that is exciting and wonderful in many ways, and also challenging in many ways. And we've been watching as school districts are announcing cases of COVID that are in their community. So it's present and still needs to be managed. We know all of you educators are working incredibly hard, and we celebrate all of the unsung heroes out there that are trying to make this work well for everyone. But we do know that the Delta variant is highly effective. The vaccines are highly effective against hospitalization and death from COVID, even in these circumstances. And this graphic from San Diego Union Tribune in July shows the difference, how much a difference vaccines make in the rates of infections. And so do know that it is working to get vaccinated. Outdoor airflow is still important and relevant. Moving classes outside and school meals and other programs outside is still a very relevant strategy for the coming year. And it's particularly important to add this extra layer of protection by being outside when masks are off, such as at lunchtime, and also with whole classes of students under 12 years old who are not allowed to be vaccinated yet in particular. But we think it's important for everyone, but those groups and times in particular. So the new year also holds opportunities as we start to do things again and differently. And so we've been thinking about this as the theme of this fall, I think, is back to school outside for us. It's a phrase we're standing behind because I think it really helps us shift our mindset about where we might go. We know that there are opportunities too with federal relief bills and funds that are really incredibly enormous funding for schools. And I've heard it described as once in a generation or once in every 2 generation levels of funding that are coming through the pipeline. And there are huge numbers of needs that those funds are intended for and needed for. But do know that individual school districts can decide how to spend it. And outdoor learning is eligible in, I think, all 3 of the funding sources that have been passed. And you can use the funds under the categories of optimizing ventilation to reduce virus transmission, since outdoors has the best ventilation you can get usually. You can use it to address learning goals by doing hands-on learning outside. You can also use it to achieve mental health benefits to help address the mental health crisis and using access to nature and the benefits that nature provides. We also know that the public agencies are increasingly supporting outdoor learning, and we've seen it and been tracking it appear in public policy. One of the most significant places is in the federal health guidance from the CDC. It's just a really small line in a really enormous document, but it is a piece that we can look to and work from. And in their February update, the CDC added the line, consider having activities, classes, or lunches outdoors when circumstances allow. I think that's fantastic. So we're sharing that with you now, and we'll be putting it into a social media campaign that we're working on. That looks more like this. This particular graphic, which we just produced and put online recently, has a quote from similar guidance from the US Department of Education: hold classes, activities, and meals outdoors when safe and feasible. And again, it's one small line in a very large document, but incredibly exciting that the National Department of Education supports this. And so we want to spread that news, and we encourage you to help us spread that news by going on social media and sharing these graphics. We also have a graphic here that is a state level head of education. Tony Thurmond, California State Superintendent of Public Instruction, gave a webinar about back to school and included our colleague Andra Yakoyan from San Mateo County Office of Education, who gave a presentation on how schools could go outside in California. And in his introduction of her work, he had this wonderful quote about the importance of outdoor learning. And he said, we've always known about outdoor education. It's a hands-on way for students to learn and become stewards of the environment. But in the COVID-19 era, hands-on outdoor education becomes a great COVID mitigation strategy. And I'm so excited that he said this. He is the head of education for 6.2 million children in California. So that's a really powerful piece, I think. And we also have this third graphic online so far about making outdoor learning plan A this year, enjoying fresh, healthy air outside. And so we'll be picking up the pieces of policies and guidance and overall themes about outdoor learning and pointing to resources with these different graphics with images. And you'll see them appear on our Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. And we would love it if you'd help us get the word out. So reflecting on where we are, I think the theme for the fall is also resilience. How does being outside can offer us insurance. The vaccines have really helped to improve the current situation, but being outside adds an additional layer of protection that helps keep transmission low, which will help keep schools open. I think we also are thinking a lot about the future and resilience and knowing that this is not the last crisis, unfortunately, that will come through. So having outdoor classrooms and program spaces gives schools and districts more options in the future when things arise or if more variants cause us to be concerned again, and the ability to pivot into something other than online learning when these challenges arrive. And I think we're also reflecting a lot with the fires and floods and hurricanes on how climate is shifting and is very present. And so we're thinking too about the long-term work and importance of having school grounds shift to become less paved, more green, and shadier tree-oriented spaces that can help both heal the earth and solve a small part of this problem of climate, to help teach by example, and also to directly shade children from the effects of heat that we know is coming. And so I thought I would go from that background of the national initiative and bringing us to the present to thinking more about long-term work and to talk a little bit about Green Schoolyards America's long-term work that we were doing before the pandemic and hope to keep continuing with now, which our work mainly focuses on collaborating with school districts and public agencies to help them transform their asphalt-covered school grounds into more park-like green spaces that improve children's well-being, learning and play while contributing to the ecological health and resilience of their cities. So we help districts set up district-wide programs to think about how all the land they manage can give them the greatest benefit for education, health, community access, and the environment. Our vision is all about long-term resilience, and we're working toward a future where all children will have daily access to nature right outside their classroom door, which enables them to have hands-on learning across the curriculum, child-directed play, robust health, positive social environment for children of all ages. We want to see a future where the environment on school grounds acts as green infrastructure for their cities so that we can help to foster healthy urban watersheds and improve climate resilience of the land that school districts manage. We can enrich wildlife habitats on that land and help to provide plants that improve air quality in our cities and towns. We see this work as also being about public land, in particular at public schools, where school grounds become and are vibrant, welcoming centers for their communities, and the public lands managed by schools also become or function as public parks after hours, so that because we know that the green space is not yet equitably distributed, but if we can make every school into a park, kids can use it during the day for school, and then all neighborhoods have access to green space afterward as well. So our work generally falls into research, policy, and support categories. We're doing research on surface temperatures of school grounds and curriculum connected to helping children become change makers in their own school ground, figure out where it's hot and how to cool it. We work with policymakers on policy language at different levels of scale. And we support school districts through consulting with them on how they might set up programs. We also produce written materials, books, resources, many of which are on our website, in addition to the library I was talking about. And our team includes also 3 of us are published authors. So we also have a good body of work from which to advise on supporting school districts. So why do we need living schoolyards? My example here is from California, but I think that this is true of many of our cities across the country, where we have vast paved spaces with so many children on them every day. And a lot of them in urban places look like this, and they don't really offer enough now to improve well-being of students, their communities, or the environment. In California, the numbers are 6.2 million kids in K-12 schools on 130,000 acres of public land, the vast majority of which looks like this or close. So our school grounds across the country, and these pictures are from around the country, are greatly in need of systemic investment in order to realize their potential as thriving centers for 21st century education, community engagement, and ecological health. Even if schools are not fully paved, wide open green spaces that were like this one at a Midwestern school are also not optimal. They are designed to do just one thing, and that's really play sports. They were designed to help produce physically fit soldiers for World War II originally, and to help factory workers learn automation and repetition. And that's not exactly what we're doing in school these days. So all of our grounds need renovation and diversification and more nature. And to still include the sports and other things that happen here, but to also have an ecosystem of opportunities of other things to do. So we want our 1940s designed schoolyards to come up to the 21st century education and match our curriculum and be more appropriate for the way that schools are trying to teach. We want to provide access to nature for all children. We know that our prisons require all inmates to be able to have up to 2 hours of outdoor time every day. And we know most of our children get about half an hour outside every day. So we both need to make better environments and to let kids outdoors more. We know that kids' space in cities and the way that they interact with it have shifted over the last 4 generations. And this map here is from an article that appeared in England in 2007, but it could be really anywhere in the world, where the biggest bubble there on the aerial photo shows where an 8-year-old could walk in 1919 by himself without any adults. And that 6-mile roaming radius shrunk in the 50s to about a mile for his child. And then in the 1970s, the mother could only, the next generation could only go half a mile away at age 8, and the current child could only walk to the end of the block. And that's pretty much the story of every city and town, I think, across the US too. And I tried to map this for my family. It was fun and interesting and similar. And I think we don't often ask and know what our grandparents did, and we don't observe the loss of children's freedom of seeing cities and the loss of adventure and learning that would have happened with those kids learning about life. And so when we give kids blank, open spaces with nothing to have an adventure in, it's a problem because they're not getting the adventure in the city and more widely. So I think we try to help schools provide some of that to their students on site, because school grounds are the main place kids go outside. We do this also because of equity. Most of our cities don't have equal access to green space. The green space is not equitably distributed. So if we make every school a green schoolyard, then almost all neighborhoods would have short walk to a green space, and every kid would have it at school. We know that social emotional well-being and mental health are improved if we have nature in school grounds. And so living schoolyards provide contact with nature, which reduces stress. They give places for relaxation and collaboration. They help set the stage for social skills that lead to autonomy and confidence and healthy relationships. Our current schoolyard design are not designed to optimize children's happiness. We think that they should be. And so we often, which is not to say that adults' convenience and risk aversion and sense of aesthetic are not important, but they should not be the only factors by which we design school grounds. And so we just point that out here to think about children as the central users of these spaces, and to make their needs central and their need for happiness central. Physical activity also goes up when you make a green space. Kids move more when they have something to do. That's the simple piece. And nutrition gardens are also a way to improve health, as is removing pesticides and things. The ecological impact as a whole with all of this land is incredibly important. And so again, the numbers of California are about 130,000 acres of land. If they mostly look like this, the combined ecological impact on our state is large when we have this negative lack of ecology happening across the state. And in the country, it's estimated that the land is about 2 million acres. So what school districts do with their own land is important and should be thought about from a land management perspective. And these processes and problems out there from an ecological perspective, climate change, are big, and they are too big for any one organization to handle, and they require collaboration. So we encourage the building of resilient cities to include school grounds and conversations between all different disciplines to bring that together. We know too that landscapes, that everything a school does is the curriculum, as my colleague Michael Stone has said. And so that means that children learn from the environment, not just what you're teaching them, but what they're observing. So students who at this school, which is a photograph from a school in San Francisco in 1991 that sparked the Green Schoolyard movement. What does this schoolyard say to the kids about their value to adults and their place in the world? It doesn't really send a very positive message. But if you watch this school, those buildings in the background disappear. If we work together, we can change spaces at a large scale. And we watch those buildings disappear behind plants in this shot from 10 years later in the same spot. And then in the same spot, or approximately in 2007, this landscape has a completely different message for children about care of adults, how adults care for children, how they are supporting them. So I think this is a message that we would probably prefer to send our children. So living schoolyards are richly layered outdoor environments that strengthen local ecological systems while providing place-based hands-on learning resources for children and youth of all ages. And we really do mean that this is preschool through 12th grade and beyond. Even though a lot of the pictures here I happen to have are of younger children, this is equally relevant for older children as well. Living schoolyards are places designed to increase children's joy and laughter and happiness. They have benefits for green infrastructure. If we think about all of the parcels, the 500 acres, say, that an individual urban school district might have across 80 schools, when those are designed together to absorb the stormwater and to provide shade, they can cool the environment and shift the watershed in a positive way. They provide outdoor resources for hands-on learning, whether it's ponds like this that give kids emotional resonance and science experiment potential and understanding of wildlife and pets in this case. They give you places to do art, many kinds of curriculum across the grade levels and disciplines. Living schoolyards, again, provide places for urban resilience. We need to design them in ways that are different than green infrastructure that's designed for adult spaces. So thinking about how we unpave a space and make it child-friendly. We don't want to be taking off pavement and making a rain garden that no one can walk in. We want it to be a space children can engage with while also having ecological benefits. We want to think about how wildlife habitat can be improved for things like butterflies and birds across a whole city. How could a school district plant patches of habitat strategically so that you can improve the wildlife that you're about in your textbooks and make a real measurable difference students can track across the city. If we look at climate resilience and adaptation and the need for change, the climate crisis is impacting our children's health and well-being, and that will continue in the future and get worse when we have spaces like this with no shade. In California, I think about 60% of our schools have less than 5% shade, and most of that shade is at the curb, like this picture shows. It's in the teacher's parking lot and where the parents can see it at drop-off, and there isn't a bit of shade for the children on site, which is why we've been talking about so many tents during the COVID response, because we need shade. But the long-term solution is trees, I think, unpaving and trees. We want to be growing schoolyard forests that provide shade for children and shift microclimate where the kids are present to directly shade kids. And this is not just an urban problem. This is also a suburban one. This is also a suburban school in California. You can see it's hot, hot and wealthy in this neighborhood. All those neighbors have pools, and yet their children have no shade on the school ground. So this is a universal problem. We've just been designing our school grounds for 50 years or 70 years without thinking about how it feels to be in these spaces. And it's getting hotter. So adding shade is important. Planting trees and forests to directly shade children. This is a child-planted forest at a Berkeley school at Washington Elementary that my colleague Robin Moore worked on in the 70s. This is what it looks like when it grows up. So we have plenty of these. There are great models already in the US. This has about 26% of the school ground land is covered by tree canopy, which is great. We are aiming for somewhere between 25 and 50% of all property owned by schools, inhabited by children, to be forested where the children are present during school. Berlin, Germany has a model that's now 30 years old. They're 30 years ahead of us on unpaving school grounds. They unpaved 400 school grounds 30 years ago, required all of them to absorb 100% of the biggest storm in 10 years. And so they regraded all the schools, make the stormwater go toward the middle of the site and planted trees. And so now they have great tree canopy, fabulous parks at all the schools across the city. And this is just an aerial photo of one of the schools, the same school we were just looking at, I think. And you can see that the red area is their sports field. They still have plenty of sports space. The building with these 3 wings has different types of courtyard design, but this is the play area that kids are in at recess, and it's very thoroughly tree canopied. About 65% of the playground is shaded. And it's deciduous, so the trees lose their leaves in the winter and they get sun when they need it in the winter. And it's 22% on this property is shaded of the whole property, including the buildings, edge to edge. Play is also super important. So living school grounds give not only spaces for the ball games and games with rules, but also open-ended play that fosters social and physical and intellectual growth for kids to collaborate and make things and have adventures and wonder. We know that health and physical activity are bounded by both the infrastructure choices give kids things to climb and jump over, but also the play policies and rules that adults set for appropriate, what we consider appropriate behavior. So it's both an infrastructure issue and a play policy topic. Social emotional well-being can be fostered in a green schoolyard in a play context by doing something like putting in a gigantic sandbox like this one in a school in Taipei, Taiwan, where 30 kids can get in at once and make a collaborative project. This is the best bang for your buck in social emotional well-being, I think, and collaboration is a big sandbox with a water source. Thinking about lifelong health, that's things like school gardens and learning about nutrition and leading a healthy physical lifestyle. But it's also about skills with tools. And we all want kids to grow up to know how to use tools properly. So that means we need to give them chances to do that while they're building and using a green schoolyard. And then thinking about environmental health and reducing exposures to pesticides and other toxins that might be in traditional school ground management, and thinking about how we reframe that with health in mind. And again, school grounds can be social spaces after hours, and their value as community gathering spaces when we're allowed to do so, this is clearly a pre-COVID picture, is really important, I think. So reflecting and closing, the big picture to me is that public land devoted to children is precious and in short supply, and we really need to use it wisely. The choices that schools make and districts make about how they use their land matters, both to children on a day-to-day basis and for the environment of the places that they're in. Climate change and other environmental problems are too big for any one organization to address alone, so collaboration is key, and it's the only way to move through this. Happiness should really be a priority. And students, we know that students are returning to school this fall, carrying a lot of the mental health burdens from this year as our school staff. Spending time outside at school will help to improve long-term mental health and work through the crisis now. And it's both important now and in the future. And overall, investing in outdoor learning as a COVID response is a step toward a greener, healthier future that's better for kids, their communities, and the planet. Thank you. So that was a lot of information. I would be happy to talk with you all if you have questions about it. And so does anyone have questions that you want to talk about or things that came up in the chat? I was not tracking the chat while we were talking. So feel free to turn on your video and put your hand up, and Lauren, maybe we'll see you and call on you, or put your question in chat. And we'll just talk for like another minute or two, maybe a couple questions, and then we do want to have time for breakouts. And we can also follow up on these topics in the future as well. Question about, will the slideshow be available? We are going to post this recording on the website in the community of practice section under today's date. It usually takes us a week to get the video edited and put up, but it will be up, and it will also be on YouTube. We don't share the deck directly itself. I think we'll be having more of the information that was in this, and the approach to climate will be in future articles that appear in the library. We just need to write them in that format to get them shared that way. But the deck itself, because there are a lot of children in it, is not directly shareable this way.
I can't see people's hands, but if you'd like to just unmute yourself and speak up, feel free. If you have questions for Sharon.
Yeah, this is John Rashensky with San Diego Unified School District. I'm just curious, have you come across any information of how many school districts may actually be utilizing some of their COVID funding for this type of thing? Is there data that's starting to develop showing that at all?
I think that is one of the questions in our survey that we're going to be sending out in the next week or two to find out more specifically. But we do know there are a few data points, like the Portland Public Schools it's not in numbers, but in examples of like Portland Public Schools built about, I think it was 156 outdoor classrooms a year ago, and we're outside for much of the year through the winter in Maine. And some of the funds for that came from the federal relief funds. Washington, D.C. has just allocated recently $9 million to help fund outdoor learning, and each school has access to a portion of those funds. So every district can decide how to spend it. And there are many more, but I don't have those specifics off the top of my head, but there are a lot. I think that they're not necessarily advertising the way that they're building them. And so we're looking to do that second level of research to find that out and how they allocated it. But the idea is to not do this as something extra, do it as the way that you implement the things you were already planning to do. So if you're working on increasing student engagement and learning outcomes, then building outdoor classrooms with learning outcomes in mind could be a way to achieve that. And if you're working on mental health improvements, then access to nature and a kind of regenerative, quiet spot on campus might be a way to start, using funds for that is consistent with mental health goals and things like that. So thinking through what's allowed in the relief funds and what you not adding to it, but doing it this way so that you can have long-term resources outside for that purpose.
We have one question from Eugenia. She says, are there any studies being done anywhere on how schools who adopt outdoor lunch or outdoor learning do in terms of COVID outbreaks? If not, could we invite people from academia to see if they can partner up with districts, because data talks?
That's a good
way to advocate.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know if anyone is actively researching that from a data perspective. We have been hearing anecdotally the previous recordings of this community of practice have many speakers from many districts talking about how they went outside and what they've been doing overall. And we are hearing consistently from schools and districts who are, particularly if they were able to go outside with 100% or much of the time, that they are an island of health in a sea of illness. And so I think that it's been helping significantly. The more you can do it, the better, which is not to say that I think it's important to do at any scale, but the more you do it, the more benefit you're likely to see as a result. If all kids can be outside all the time wearing masks and seeing this outdoor learning is not, it's also probably complicated to measure because it's not a single factor, it's a layer of protection in an overall plan. And so we don't see it as the only way to do it, but it's, you would keep your social distancing and cohorting and masking and be outside. And that just adds one more thing that keeps people safer than otherwise. It's just an inexpensive, effective way to do it. But yes, someone should collect data and we'll let you know. If anyone is doing that, please let us know. We would love to hear about it. And the data we're collecting in our survey is probably not directly on that topic, but that's a good follow-up too. And then maybe one more, and I do want to leave a couple of minutes at least for a couple of small breakout conversations. So
yeah, I see one question here that's about general insights on how to get over district level concerns about installing tents. We're still there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's our permitting systems are not set up to have long-term tents outside. I think is in a lot of places we are running into that for sure in California, where we have earthquake standards that are conflicting with setting up tents that are big enough to be effective, and it's a problem. And I think the same problem came up in New York City. I had heard elsewhere with different permitting authorities, it hasn't been as big an issue. So it might depend on where you live. And I think it's about making the case to those permitting authorities, be they at the state level or local level, that you're weighing different types of risk and lightweight tent versus COVID someone at the policy level needs to weigh those specifically and to be asked to weigh them together instead of just thinking about them separately, I think. But we don't have a great answer for that yet, except you can also use umbrellas, and there are many ways to make shade, and tents is just one of them. It's a nice one, but there are other ways to be shaded. And our infrastructure page of the website has vast resources on shade and seating and tables and cost estimates and other things that will help you get started. So I do want to leave it here. I thank you for all the questions, and I'm excited to read through them as we move forward.